Venice is easy to get lost in. Like any medieval city, it was designed for people who are going to spend their whole lives there, and then eternity after they're finally raised from the dead. That was the godly plan, but commerce came and the city became home to heathens and heretics and philosophers, spices and courtesans and carnival. Venice has a sinister hold on me, the 1,000 carnival masks staring at me out of the shops, across courtyards with empty eyes, were trying to tell me that this was the devil's summer home, and if I waited too long, the master would return. I believed them, but I didn't leave. Instead, I bedded a raven-haired prostitute in a small room off the Rialto, and for some reason she stuck around, finding me each morning, following me on my walks around the city, negotiating good prices for me with the Italian merchants, and holding my hand while she said inscrutable things in halting English. At night, the sect was overwhelming, our bodies attacking each other, and then she slipped away. I don't know where, only to find me again in the morning, stepping out from the shadow of a church and kissing my cheek. Once, I asked her to stay the whole night, and she laughed. Why? For love? I never asked again. I got lost every day, crossing the canals and slipping behind alleys, dashing into 100 churches, all of which seemed to be empty, and hearing the voices of carnival masks whisper alchemical secrets in my ear as I stepped back into the sun. The city is sinking, they warned me, but if you stay long enough, we will teach you how to turn lead into gold. I hadn't paid her for weeks, and still she found me each morning. She wanted little. I bought her lunch and dinner. I paid for wine and dessert, and sometimes a token of my affection if we danced. I asked her why. Why? It was my birthday, she said, when I met you. She showed me the master glassblowers. I watched, just inside the door of their workshop, as the heated ovens, as hot as hell, then sculpted liquid glass. They could make a rose or a human face so easily, but they preferred abstract shapes. They apprenticed themselves, imitating the world that is, then proved their art by designing pieces of a new one. I saw the shape of love, curved in pink glass with blue rings orbiting its ending. I saw temptation wrapped into a sharp curl and made the sting of a violet wasp. I saw emotions I had never imagined suspended in green, surrounded by pockets of air. I told the glassblower I wanted to know what they felt like. He told me that if I have grandchildren, perhaps they will understand. One of them showed me the wave of a perfectly clear glass bending through time to collapse in a sulfurous crag of dark red and fiery black. It's your future, he told me, just as the masks describe it. He offered it to me for $1,000 American. I haggled him down to $780 and had it wrapped carefully in silk. I walked back outside and she found me. She took my arm and followed where I led. I saw that the masks were closing in, hanging closer to me on every wall I passed. The sex was especially good that night. I had planned to spend 6 months crossing Europe, seeing the mountains of Switzerland, the valleys of France, and the forests of Germany. Instead, I was here, 4.5 months now. The summer was coming. The devil drew near. New wines arrived by the truckload from across Italy, where they were loaded on boats and sent up the canals to be put in cellars of underground bars that served uncommon varietals. She took me on a tour. I found my favorites. We drank together, looking for the flavors that made us forget the island was sinking. Another month. I learned how to get from my hotel to the glassblower's workshop, to the Piazza San Marco, to the best of the shady wine bars without missing a turn. Even at night, without a moon, I almost never got lost. I noticed gargoyles hanging from the walls of houses for the first time. The gargoyles whispered too. I slept through the church bells in the morning. The hotel maid began to wake me up in the afternoon. I cursed at her in Italian, and she crossed herself and didn't come back. She was the hotel owner's wife, and I suffered for frightening her. The next morning, long after my raven-haired demon had slipped out, the state police opened my door. I had stayed in Italy for 5 months on a 1-month visa, and the hotel stopped looking the other way. They grabbed my suitcases as they were, leaving most of my clothes behind, and escorted me down to the street. I would be sent on a flight back to America immediately. I cursed at them, I pleaded, I begged them, I almost wailed, "But the devil is coming soon!" But they were state police, not Venetian, and they served another master. As they shoved me into the back of the car, inspiration struck, and I screamed, "You must let me shop!" I offered them $2,000 to give me a few hours buying souvenirs for my favorite places. The plane didn't leave for another 6 hours, and the money was good, so they escorted me wherever I asked. The only time I ever traveled on wheels in the city of canals. I went to the glassblower shops. I purchased The Shape of Love, and I purchased The Sting of Temptation, and I bought the emotions I had never imagined, suspended in their prison of green. I put them all in my suitcase. I could not take my future with me, because it had been left back at the hotel, and already stolen by the maid by the time an officer was sent back to look for it. I went to the wine bars and bought the rarest bottles, but most of all I went to the mask makers and stood in their shops and listened, to find the masks that whispered to me the loudest. I bought them, 13 of them, before my credit card declined to serve me. I arranged to have them shipped back to me in the States. If I was being taken out of Venice, I would bring as much of Venice with me as I could. From inside the last shop, I saw my raven-haired woman sitting at a cafe, sipping brandy, watching me through the window. I ran to her, followed by the police, and she pretended not to know me. "One kiss," I begged. "Why?" she asked. "For love?" The policeman laughed at me, stupid American. The masks were quiet. Not even the stewardess spoke to me on the flight home. They knew what I was. An American consular official asked if my rights had been violated in captivity. My rights? What did I care? I wanted to stay, and that was all. The flight stopped in London, and by the time it touched down again in Washington, I'd realized that I was broke and homeless and couldn't remember the English pronunciation of my name. I heard it again for the first time when I was finally released from captivity and sent on my way, with nowhere to go. I'd spent it all, stopped payment on my rent months ago. Even the treasures I put myself in debt to take back would be delivered to my sister's house in Minneapolis, a land of snow. I lived in a homeless shelter for a while, got a job in graphic design, pulled myself out of debt. I rented a house far out in the suburbs and have the boxes from Italy stored in a locked room behind the exercise equipment. I haven't opened them, and I'm not allowed to go back to Italy for another 3 years. I tell myself it's better that way. I believe it. I say my very English name over and over again. When I'm in the city at night, if I'm not careful, if I'm too deep in thought or not paying attention to one foot after the other, I look up to find that I've walked an old pattern, from my hotel to the glassblower's workshop, to the Piazza San Marco, to the best of the shady wine bars, without missing a turn. Every time I pass a church, I look to see if she's waiting in the shadow, and I have never fallen in love.